This is Erin Waywalk. I'm representing Group 3 with Ann Sutt and Mallory Brown. We did usability testing for Ziplist, which is a free grocery management list tool enabling users to create and share grocery lists with family and friends. The Ziplist web application also allows users to create their own recipe book by adding personal recipes and/or adding recipes from anywhere on the web using the recipe search feature within the application. And I'll show you a quick picture of what that looks like. It's right here. So on the right side we have the recipes, on the left side we have the list section. The purpose of our study was to use fresh eyes on the Ziplist web application. We only use the website. We did not use the phone application, but there is one. The web application to provide user feedback regarding what we as UX professionals see as poor usability. We expect to share these results with the Ziplist user experience team regarding our findings, specifically targeting the issues we have found with the application. How did we test Ziplist? We did usability testing. There are 3 of us. We're all remote students, so we decided to split them up evenly. Each of us did 2 different usability tests, which did present some problems because it was a little bit hard to keep things completely consistent between the tests. The environments were slightly different, the moderators were different, but we did our best. We all wanted to get some experience doing usability testing. Here are the 6 task objectives that we had for our usability testing. Number 1, can a user search for a recipe, add a recipe to their favorites, and then navigate to their personal recipes list? Number 2, is the user able to add a recipe from Ziplist's public recipe posting to their personal library? Number 3, can a user put items on their list and then successfully tag them without error in clicks? Number 4, when creating a shopping list by adding grocery items, does the user understand the meaning and purpose of tags? Do they associate tag with labeling lists? And I'll explain this one a little bit more in the future. And number 5, does the user understand icon metaphors used in the My List section? And number 6, does the user see himself or herself using this application for grocery shopping regularly? We then put together a task list. So we had the users do these 5 things. Search for a recipe and save it to the recipes. Create a recipe for smoothies containing strawberries, bananas, vanilla yogurt, and carrot juice. Have the user add 3 items to the grocery list and label the list using the tag feature. Have the user add 3 additional items to the grocery list, but provide a new tag. And lastly, have the user minimize the grocery list from the page. So we each went through our testing, and this is what we found out. Could a user search for a recipe, add it to their favorites, and then navigate to the personal recipes list? Yes. Everyone was able to do this with minimal complications and without having to ask the moderator for help. Is the user able to add a recipe from Ziplist's public recipe posting to their personal library? Yes, this was also successful. Something that was interesting about this was that Ziplist doesn't make it very clear if you are in your personal recipes or the database that they have on file. When you first make an account, there's nothing in your recipes. The default is for it to be on My Recipes. So when we asked them to search for something, they would go here and type pizza. Well, it would come back with nothing because they were in the My Recipes section. So it did take a second for them to figure out, oh, I need to be in Explore All. And then search for a pizza recipe. And then choose one. And save it to their favorites. And then it would show up in the recipe box. So all of them were able to do that with fairly minimal complications, but all of our users first started in the My Recipes section, checked for the recipe there, and then went over to the Explore All feature. Can a user put items on their list and then successfully tag them without errant clicks? So we asked people to put some things on their list here. Apples, bananas, grapes. And then what we asked them to do was give them all the same label. So we had some people that would click on them, they realized that you can't really do that. They didn't really understand the whole label thing because we were not very clear that what we actually meant was tag the items. And the way that you tag them is you click on them, and then you have to add a tag, which is not super clear because it looks like you can't click on it. And then you can add it to a tag. Like that. But it took most of them a little bit of time to figure out what we wanted, and also we all had to help our users be able to do this. So to us, it didn't seem like it was super successful. It did take quite a bit of help. In a couple of cases, they were not able to figure it out at all. When creating a shopping list by adding grocery items, does the user understand the meaning and purpose of tags, and do they associate tag with labeling lists? So kind of along the same lines as the last question, um, we did have a problem with the whole tag system. Some of it had to do with the fact that we never explicitly used the word tags. We tried using the word label and categorize because we thought maybe that would make more sense. But it ended up just being confusing because they didn't understand. They thought they should find a word that said label or a word that said categorize, and they weren't finding that. So it was a little bit confusing. So to us, we feel like they were not successfully able to understand the meaning and the purpose of the tag system in the Ziplist application. Does the user understand icon metaphors used on the My List section? So I have a picture here, and you saw it also on the website. This little icon here you would think would be for editing. And all of us, all three of us on the team thought that that's what it was. But what's interesting is when you click on it, it actually makes that list disappear, which is weird and counterintuitive. We were curious if the rest of our participants would have the same impression that we had, and in fact they all did. So they did not understand the icon metaphor that was used here because everybody thought it was an edit button, and it's not an edit button. So they did not understand, so we do not think that that was successful. Finally, does a user see himself or herself using this application for grocery shopping regularly? We tested 6 people and we did 6 post-test questionnaires, and only 2 of them said that they would use this for grocery shopping regularly, which for Ziplist is not great news. So there's that. Some challenges that we faced with doing our testing was, first of all, the inconsistency with the usability testing sessions. So each test was done slightly differently than the rest of them, partially due to different people, but also just due to different moderators and, you know, not having everything sorted out beforehand like we thought we did. The lack of experience conducting usability tests. Only one of us on our team had experience doing usability tests, and so there were a lot of questions that we didn't know to ask, a lot of things that we didn't clarify beforehand because we didn't even think of them. And then when it came up in the middle of the test, it was a little bit tricky to know how to handle that. So that was something that was a challenge for our team. The tag concept, which I mentioned before, it differed not only between the users but also between the moderators. So, the way I understand the tag is different than the way that Anne and Mallory understood it. even though we didn't really realize that until we were in the middle of the test. And at that point, there was really nothing we could do. We just kind of had to put on a happy face and make our users think that we were totally on the same page as our teammates and figure it out. So um, we realize now that we should have been a little bit more explicit between each other in terms of what we thought each thing meant. Also, we had a limited number of participants, so in terms of statistical significance, there's not really a whole lot we can offer, only having 6 participants. And finally, there was no protocol for assisting participants in the testing. Kind of going back to the same thing, like lack of communication, lack of understanding, lack of experience doing these tests. We didn't set up any protocol for how much help we could offer our users while they were doing the testing, and so at least for myself, I think it made it seem as though I didn't know what was going on and I wasn't sure how to help the person that I was testing, when in actuality I just wasn't sure how much I could help them and what was appropriate. So if we were to do it again, it's something we would definitely work on. Here are some of the lessons that we learned. The top 3 are related to lessons for the Ziplist team, and the bottom 3 are lessons for us as a usability testing team. So first of all, the importance of appropriate icons and their universal association. So remember the pencil icon that I showed earlier. Everybody that we tested, and the 3 of us, we all thought that was an edit button. If you Google edit icon, you will see that it's a pencil icon. So Ziplist really didn't do a great job of that when they put this application together. We aren't really sure why they chose to use such a widely recognized edit icon to minimize part of the screen. That just doesn't really make a lot of sense to us. Secondly, consistency across the application enables users to have a better understanding of the application. So, if you're going to have create a recipe on this side, maybe you should have create a list on this side. Or if you're going to have filter options on this side, maybe you should use the same terminology over here instead of tags. Things like that, maybe my list, maybe my recipes should be up here. Things like that. Also, this minimizes, but that doesn't minimize. And thirdly, appropriate highlighting or indication of buttons is important for learnability. So the one thing that we notice is that when you go to create a recipe, if you don't fill out some of the fields, there's nothing in here that tells you what you have to fill out. And when you push create recipe, it says unable to continue. Please update the highlighted fields. So they could have just changed that. And plus, these highlights are not very obvious. So they could have just changed it so you knew, put an asterisk or something like that, so the user knows what they have to fill out before they even start doing the recipe itself. It'll make it much easier for them to learn. The 3 lessons that we learned, 3 of many that we learned, that we need to use appropriate application terminology. So again, if Ziplist calls it a tag, we need to call it a tag when we do the testing instead of a label. As a moderator, remain more neutral when administering usability test sessions. So that was one thing that none of us did a great job at, is we all talked about, or we all added verbal affirmations, and we should have remained more neutral so that we were not indicating anything to our users, that they were able to just go on through and didn't really have a negative or positive impression from us. And they weren't swayed either way. And finally, double and triple check that all the objectives match the tasks and the post-test questionnaire. So we didn't do horrible matching our objectives to our tasks, but our post-test questionnaire, which I don't have in our presentation today, we asked some really good questions, but we really should have double and triple checked that the questions we asked in the post-test questionnaire would explicitly help our task objectives, because what ended up happening is the wording in our post-test questionnaire didn't explicitly answer the questions that we had in our task objectives, so our results were not as accurate as they could have been. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation today.